delegates to the Australia-China Youth Dialogue. I want to speak without notes because of a deep conviction in the future of Australia's relationship with China, and I do want to spend a very small amount of time on explaining how we got here, how Australia was able to put itself in the right place at the right time in the Asian region, in the Asian century. Some suggest that this was luck. It was not luck, it was good management, and good management displayed by visionary leaders, and I would assert from both sides of politics. And then I will finish my remarks by sharing with you some thoughts about your role, the role of younger people in terms of further developing that relationship across the spectrum. Obviously not just trade, not just economic, but cultural and friendship. The story, I think, really starts around 1957, where there was a new engagement with Asia that was actually initiated by a National Party leader, Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, John McEwen. Now, while I don't agree with the position that John McEwen embraced in relation to trade barriers, putting up tariffs, he did have the foresight to approach Japan, and this was in a time when Australians were justifiably embittered about the Second World War, and just about everyone knew someone who was in the Second World War, in the Pacific War. Nevertheless, John McEwen showed great courage and vision in seeing that Australia's future really lay with engagement with Asia. He was then backed by Sir Robert Menzies, and they agreed with Japan on a commerce agreement in 1957, which did open up Australian mineral provinces to development, to feed the post-war reconstruction and the industrialisation of Japan. There was another coalition Prime Minister who began the process of dismantling the White Australia policy, and that was Harold Holt. He did so to end a very long period of shame for this country. He wasn't around to see it finally implemented. That was left to the Whitlam government, but I pay tribute to Harold Holt in beginning the dismantling of the White Australia policy, which again removed a terrible obstacle to our productive, friendly engagement with our own region. The next major development was an opposition leader, Gough Whitlam, who visited China as an opposition leader and pledged that if elected in 1972 he would formally recognise the People's Republic of China. And one of the first decisions that the Whitlam government made, I think it was when the cabinet comprised two members, Gough Whitlam and Lance Barnard, was to formally recognise the People's Republic of China. And I took the initiative of visiting Gough just the other day. He's 95 now, and we reminisced over that. And I can tell you that when I go to China, I don't miss an opportunity to raise that. But when I do, regardless of the age of the people with whom I'm engaging in conversation, they nod wisely and they know whether they were around at the time or not. They remember Australia as one of the first countries to recognise the People's Republic of China. I think it's fair to say that the next real engagement was by Prime Minister Hawke, who literally foresaw the Asian century and began long discussions with his Chinese counterparts in China and here in Australia, sitting for hours, not something that would be easy to do today, but sitting for hours with leaders and understanding from those conversations that they were preparing to open up China, to make it a more open, engaging economy. And it was with the advice of his then economic advisor, Professor Ross Garnaut, that this engagement began in earnest. And Ross was so committed to it that he became the Australian ambassador to China, and I took his place in Bob Hawke's office, and we helped prosecute that engagement. I remember in 1987, when China committed to investing in the Mount Chena iron ore mine. That was the first major mining investment outside of China. In order to take advantage of this engagement, we needed, as a country, to create an open, competitive economy. That is, to begin the process of dismantling the barriers to trade which had forced Australian industry to look inwards on a small domestic market. And that was a failed policy. Our manufacturing sector was on its knees, and we demonstrated, I think, as a government, the faith in the capacity of our manufacturers and other industries to be competitive, but they would be subject to competitive forces from within the region and beyond. They responded magnificently, and it's still true today that the reform program creating that open competitive economy, starting with the floating of the exchange rate and the liberalisation of financial and product markets, has laid the foundations of 20 years of recession-free economic growth in this country. And economic growth is not just a statistic. It means that hundreds of thousands of Australians have high-quality, rewarding jobs that otherwise they would not have. But here we are, in the right place, in the right time, in the 21st century, and now it moves to you to contemplate the future of this engagement. What can it mean for our two countries? I'll tell a short story about a recent visit that I made to China, my fourth as Trade Minister, and I've only been in the job just over a year. And that was to lead a delegation of more than 100 businesses, not to Beijing on this occasion, but to provincial cities, so-called second-tier cities where you should see them, and many of you probably have. We started at places like Changsha, Wuhan, Chongqing, and also Chengdu. And when I flew into Chongqing, which is regarded as being out in the west of China, I actually had a little nap on the plane from Chengdu to Chongqing. It's only a half an hour, so a quick cat nap, and I woke up and I thought, this looks like Hong Kong, or Singapore, or both, or New York. And here we are in Western China, as this massive city of skyscrapers snakes around the Yangtze River. There are 30 million people in that small area, nearly 10 million in Chengdu, and 8 million in Wuhan and Changsha. And these are not all of the country, all of the provinces and cities we visited. In fact, it's projected that by 2020, there will be 93 cities in China, each with a population greater than Sydney. When I went to China, people said to me, think in big numbers and double it again. And I think it's good advice, because it is very difficult for average everyday Australians to understand the enormity of what's happening in a country with 1.32 billion people that is moving up the economic productivity curve as people move from subsistence agriculture even into relatively low-value manufactured products. Their productivity is probably quadrupling as they do that to even produce mass-produced textiles, clothing and footwear products. But they're moving beyond that into high-value manufacturing and into services. And what we found through this engagement was an enormous enthusiasm for Australia, an enormous enthusiasm for the businesses that joined us on this trip. Now, you might suspect that the businesses would be mining companies. There weren't any mining companies on this trip. It was all about services, an initiative that Kevin Rudd took called China 2.0. And what the 2.0 signified was the second big stage of China's economic development, and as you say, a return of China rather than a rise of China. And the first stage certainly focused very much on an export-oriented growth model. What's happening in China now is that the authorities in the 12th Five-Year Plan are determined to spread the benefits of economic growth more evenly across China, not just in the coastal cities, but across central and western China. And that means that they are moving their growth model away from an extremely heavy reliance on exports as a source of growth to domestic consumption. If you look at the United States of America, for example, the US is not a great trading nation in terms of its own economic structures. Most of its income is generated domestically, and this is a direction that China is moving gradually. In so doing, they are emphasising consumption over exports, but there's also an enormous amount of investment going on in infrastructure, in home building, in highways, in very fast trains. Now, all of this is very good news, of course, for our mining industries, because we supply the coal and the iron ore for China's ongoing industrialisation. But we are in a great position and have a great reputation to do that in the service economy as well. You know, one of the, I'll give you two quick examples to get a bit of a sense of this. One of the companies that was doing very well in signing agreements that while we're there is the oldest architectural firm in Australia. Now, would you think that Australia would have a comparative advantage in architecture? Well, you bet you bet we do. And in fact, this firm is the business that created the water cube for the Beijing Olympics, and that helped develop the reputation. But they went through Western China with us, and people were signing contracts and deals with them. The other story to tell is when people talk about the future of manufacturing in Australia and the threat that it is under, understandably for it because of a high Australian dollar. We met a young guy. He managed to get $250,000 together as a tradie, and he started working with the University of New South Wales on designing kitchens. And so they have great kitchen designs, and the University of New South Wales continues to innovate in kitchen design, and they manufacture the kitchens in China, and they export the kitchens from China. Now, this guy's probably worth millions now, and he was honoured for us to be there while he signed yet another contract. It just gives you an insight into the possibilities that are available to Australian businesses in China. But it does go beyond straight economics. The best investment that we can make in China is you. There's an investment in people who are interested in enriching the relationship. We have tens of thousands of Chinese students studying in Australia, and regrettably far fewer Australians studying in China. But as you've seen from the descriptions of people who are here at the front table and Professor Roscano, we have benefited from being able to study China, having Chinese students coming here, and the relationships those studies develop are friendships for life. And yes, we have only one formal ambassador to China, but I can tell you that it's fantastic when we have hundreds and hundreds of ambassadors to China, being the young people who then grow further into positions of authority and speak so fondly of Australia, just as Australians who go to China speak so fondly of China. So we want to take this whole great adventure into a further stage, and that's why the Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, has announced a white paper, because we don't believe that we possess all wisdom. It does require a new exercise in visionary leadership, as has been displayed by previous Prime Ministers, and Prime Minister Gillard is determined to ensure that we have the best possible knowledge, the best possible insights into what is a fantastic future, so that we can absolutely consolidate on all of the economic, social and other benefits of being in the right place at the right time